Hello and welcome to Byju's Exam Prep IAS. Let's get started and look into our daily quiz. Before we start with our today's practice questions, a quick gentle reminder. Byju's Exam Prep IAS has already launched its official Telegram channel. What is that you have to do? Follow the link given in the description box or scan this QR code. This will take you to our official Telegram channel. Join the channel so that you get all the current affairs related updates. Let's get started and look into the first question. Consider the following statements with respect to particularly vulnerable tribal groups. The Zaksa Committee created primitive tribal groups as a separate category who are less developed among the tribal groups. Odisha has the highest number of PVTGs in India. Which of the statements given above are correct? The answer to this is 2 only. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article on the Hindu makes a reference to the particularly vulnerable tribal groups. Let us try and understand what are these statements. When you look into the first statement, it says the Zaksa committee created primitive tribal groups. This happens to be a wrong statement. Why? That is because when you look into who created and whose recommendation was made, it was the Debar Commission report. So basically, we had the Debar Commission which was appointed. They had to look into the plight of the particularly vulnerable tribal groups and they came up with this particular recommendation, and as a result what we have is the particularly vulnerable tribal groups. We have a criterion for identifying particularly vulnerable tribal groups which includes pre-agriculture level of technology, low level of literacy, economic backwardness, a declining or stagnant population. If there are primitive tribal groups which fit into all these criterion, that is when they would be accorded what is called as the primitive vulnerable tribal groups. How many particularly vulnerable tribal groups are there? As per census 2011, there are total of 75 PVTGs. They are spread over 17 states and 1 union territory. The categorization is done by the Ministry of Home Affairs and not by the Ministry of Tribal Affairs. This is another important pointer from the preliminary examination point of view. And do note, Odisha has the highest number of PVTGs in India. So the second statement is right. What are the initiatives taken by the government for the upliftment of the PVTGs? We have scheme for development of PVTGs on the lines of Van Bandhu Kalyan Yojana, which mandates all states to prepare conservation cum development plans for the PVTGs in that state, enactment of the Scheduled Tribes and other traditional forest dwellers, recognition of the Forest Rights Act of 2006, which for the first time recognized the land rights of tribals. Then we have local initiatives like Jan Swast Sehog by Chhattisgarh government, restricted area permits in Andaman and Nicobar Islands, formation of micro project agencies by Odisha. And this article here is speaking about one such initiative taken by the Odisha government. What is it? We have the Odisha PVTG Empowerment and Livelihood Improvement Program, which happens to be a special program designed to improve livelihood conditions and also reduce poverty among the PVTGs. The money is given to the couples marrying after the age of 18 years. This basically is a program which also intends to prevent the child marriages. Now let's look into the next practice question. Which amongst the following statements is the best description of Paris Club, an informal group of creditor nations focused on dealing with borrower nations that face difficulty in paying back their loans? A group of countries have legally committed to reach net zero emissions by 2050. An alliance of countries with the primary objective to work for efficient consumption of solar energy to reduce dependence on fossil fuels. An informal group comprising 40 odd member states, mostly middle-sized states, who oppose bigger regional powers grabbing permanent seats. Which amongst this is the best description of Paris Club? The answer to this is A, which happens to be an informal group of creditor nations focused on dealing with borrower nations that face difficulty in paying back their loans. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article on the Indian Express makes a reference to the Paris Club. Let us try and understand what is this Paris Club all about. The major objective of the Paris Club is basically it happens to be an informal group. What exactly happens? You have the debtor who's taken money from the creditors. Then you also have the creditor countries as well. This particular debtor country, because of the circumstantial issues, they may not be able to pay the debt on time. As a result, what we have is all creditors come together. This debtor will speak to these creditors and ultimately ask for the extension of the timeline. Let's say the creditor would have given certain amount of money, let's say hypothetically about 100 crores. This 100 crores would have to be paid, let's say, by about 2025, or let's say by 2022, because of the uncalled circumstances, let's say because of the floods or because of the drought like conditions or because of COVID-19, so on and so forth, that country which has taken the money is not able to pay back to the creditor. As a result, what do? These debtor countries, Pakistan in this particular case, will request the creditor, please give us an extension. You had asked us to pay at around 2022, but we are not able to pay this, so extend the timeline up to 2025 as a result. So this debtor country asking the creditor countries to extend the timeline is what is called as Paris Club. So basically what would happen? They would enter into an agreement with the IMF after this, and they have to bring changes as well. What are the principles of this Paris Club? It includes solidarity. Members agree to act as a group in their dealings with a given debtor. Consensus. Decisions must be accepted by all participating creditor countries. Information sharing. Members regularly share views and information with each other on the situation of debtor countries. Case by case. Decisions are tailored based on the country specific assessments. Conditionality. Negotiations take place. Only debt relief is required. A country is implementing reforms and has a demonstrated track record. Finally, comparability of treatment. Restructuring agreements with non-Paris Club creditors will not provide far more favorable terms than in the Paris Club agreed minutes. These are some of the principles on the basis of which what we have is the Paris Club. So remember, the objective of the Paris Club basically is it is an informal group of creditor nations that meets each month in the French capital and is able to find workable solutions to payment problems faced by the debtor nations. The Paris Club may also grant write-downs and write-offs of debts as well. Now let's look into the next practice question. With respect to Masala bonds, which of the following statements are correct? They are rupee denominated bonds. It is a debt instrument issued by an Indian entity in foreign markets to raise money. The first Masala bond were issued by the World Bank in 2014 to fund an infrastructure project in India. These bonds can only be issued to a resident of such a country which is a member of Financial Action Task Force. Which of the statements are correct? The answer to this is 1, 2 and 3. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article on the Hindu makes a reference to the Masala bonds. Let us try and understand what are these statements. When you look into the first statement, second statement and third statement, all the three statements that are given with respect to the Masala bonds are correct, which is why the answer to this would be D. So what are these Masala bonds? These are the bonds which are issued outside India. Let's say for example, we have the Government of India or respective state governments as well, or a private firm as well. These entities or the government agencies, in case they want to collect money from the market, they would be able to release Masala bonds in some other country. These are not bonds which are released in the domestic market, but they are the bonds which are issued outside India by an Indian entity in the Indian currency. The major objective of Masala bonds are to fund infrastructure projects, ignite internal growth and also internationalize the Indian rupee. In case of any risk, the investor has to bear the loss and not the borrower. The first Masala bond was issued by World Bank in 2014 to fund an infrastructure project in India, and there are certain rules and regulations which have been set up by the Reserve Bank of India regarding the Masala bonds. What are these rules given by the Reserve Bank of India? Any corporate and Indian bank is eligible to issue rupee denominated bond overseas. Money raised through these bonds cannot be invested in real estate activities. However, they can be used for the development of integrated township of affordable housing projects, and at the same time, the money raised through Masala bonds cannot be invested in the capital market. So this money that is taken by an Indian entity can only be used majorly for the infrastructure projects. This cannot be used for real estate activities. It cannot be used for reinvesting in the capital markets. These are the limitations that have been enforced by the Reserve Bank of India when it comes to the Masala bonds. Now, what are the characteristics of Masala bonds? When it comes to the investors, these bonds can only be issued to a resident of such a country which is a member of the Financial Action Task Force. If a country is not part of the Financial Action Task Force, its residents cannot be issued the Masala bonds. Also, the security market regulator of the country must be a member of International Organization of Securities Commission, and these bonds can also be subscribed by regional and multilateral financial institutions where India is a member country. What is the maturity period? The minimum original maturity period for bonds raised up to $50 million equivalent to INR per financial year should be 3 years. The minimum original maturity for bonds raised above 50 million US dollars is equivalent and should be about 5 years. What is the eligibility? Investors from outside of India who are interested in investing in Indian assets are eligible to invest in Masala bonds. HDFC, NTPC, India Bulls Housing Finance are a few entities which have raised funds using the Masala bonds. Now let's look into the next practice question. Consider the following pairs. We have the mission on one side, the planet it will approach on the other side. Cassini mission, Saturn, Da Vinci, Venus, Europa Clipper, Jupiter, InSight, Mars. How many pairs given above are correctly matched? The answer to this is all 4 pairs. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article on the Hindu makes a reference to the InSight mission, which is why we have taken this practice question. When you consider the Cassini mission, yes, this is with respect to Saturn. As part of the assignment, you have to put on the comment section what is the objective of Cassini. Please put it on the comment section. Then what we have is the Da Vinci. Da Vinci basically stands for Deep Atmosphere Venus, Investigation of Noble Gases, Chemistry and Imaging Plus. And this Da Vinci mission is on course to study about Venus, and the project will be launched in the year 2029 to understand the chemical composition of Venus and whether humans can inhabit it. Then what we have is the Europa Clipper mission. Yes, this is with respect to planet Jupiter, where we have NASA's Europa mission which will conduct detailed reconnaissance of Jupiter's moon Europa, investigate whether the icy moon could harbor conditions suitable for life. Finally, what we have is an InSight mission which stands for Interior Exploration using seismic investigations, geology and heat transport, and this is with respect to the red planet, that is Mars. As part of the assignment, you have to put on the comment section which are the other missions taken by NASA with respect to Mars and what are the missions taken by India with respect to Mars. Now let's look into the next practice question. In the Government of India Act of 1919, the functions of provincial government were divided into reserved and transferred subjects. Which of the following were treated as reserved subjects? Administration of justice, local self-government, land revenue, police. Select the correct answer using the code given below. The answer to this is 1, 3 and 4. When we speak about reserved subjects, these were the subjects which are administered by the governor through his executive council of bureaucrats. Then we have the transferred subjects. What are these transferred subjects? These were the ones which are administered by the ministers nominated from among the elected members of the legislative council. When you look into the first statement, administration of justice, yes, it happens to be a reserved subject, but when you consider local self-government, this was not to do with the reserved subject, but instead it happens to be a transferred subject. Land revenue, yes, it comes under the reserved subject, and police also comes under the reserved subject. Now let's look into the fact of the day. The fact of the day for today's discussion is National Service Scheme Award. Before we understand what is this award all about, we have to understand the National Service Scheme. This happens to be a central sector scheme of the Government of India. What is a central sector scheme? Basically, we have two types of scheme. One is what is called a central sector scheme. The other is central sponsored scheme. When it comes to the central sector scheme, all the investments and financing is done by the central government. But when it comes to central sponsored scheme, certain amount of money is also contributed by the state government. So the National Service Scheme is a central sector scheme, which basically means the entire finances are contributed by the central government, and we have the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports which will be implementing this scheme. It provides opportunity to the student youth of 11th and 12th class of schools, at plus 12 board level, student youth of technical institution, graduate and postgraduate at colleges and university level of India to take part in various government-led community service activities and programs. So basically, the aim of this particular scheme is to provide hands-on experience to the youth of the country so that they engage in community service. What is the motto of National Service Scheme? The motto of National Service Scheme is not me but you. So this is to serve the countrymen and the community service. What are the benefits of being a NSS volunteer? These people are open to the community service. As a result, they get exposure and experience with respect to social work. They could be efficient administrators in the near future, and they will also understand the human nature as well, because they are constantly engaging with the human interaction. Then what we have is the National Service Scheme Award. The Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports, Government of India, had instituted the National Service Scheme Awards to recognize the volunteer service rendered by NSS volunteers, program officers, NSS units, and the University Senior Secondary Council. These awards were instituted in the year 1993-94. Since then, these awards are given away every year at various levels. So what are the objectives of National Service Scheme Award? To recognize outstanding contribution made by the NSS students, to encourage more students to come and develop their personality through the community service, encourage program officers and program coordinators for catering to the needs of this particular scheme, and to also motivate NSS volunteers for continuing their selfless service towards the community work, which is why the Government of India has initiated the National Service Scheme Award. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this award. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.